long-term outlook is the one that is guarded.
Could you elaborate a little? Will he be able to stand trial in the next month or so?
At the present time, I would suspect not.
I saw Jack last evening at about 6:15 to sort of before 7 o'clock.
How was he then?
He looked very weak and appeared to me to have lost a lot of weight. He appeared also to be weak, as I say, and we talked fairly strong.
What was the last thing?
What he believed, yes, I know what he believed.
What about the conspiracy?
That he was not connected in any way, in any fashion, with anyone, in connection with any conspiracy whatsoever. That he acted upon the spur of the moment while there in the basement of the City Hall, under the emotional circumstances of that tragic weekend here in Dallas. He just happened to be there at the right time, or for him the wrong time. With the defendant dead, there are no charges, and within a matter of, I'm sure, days or weeks, Mr. Wade's office will file a motion with the court to dismiss the charges. And I think it's significant that if there is anything good about Jack's death, at least from his standpoint, he died not a convicted man.
Certainly we are here to try to do our best to shed light to the commission in every possible way.
Bob, would you agree with that?
I've asked you not to ask him anything at this time, and I'm sure that you will.
Fair enough.
Will
Well,
by that.
tomorrow, definitely, Mr. McKenzie. Will Mr. Oswald say something to us when the hearings conclude?
I would say that he will not be in a position, nor will it be appropriate for him to make any statement to the press until such time as the report is made to the President and prepared by the Commission.
Mr. Lane, you've been hired by Mrs. Marguerite Oswald to defend her son in front of the Warren Commission. Could you give us some details on that?
Well, yes, I think that it was a disgraceful thing in terms of the total destruction of his rights when he was in custody, up to and including, of course, his killing while in police custody in the basement of the Dallas courthouse. But in addition to the civil liberties aspect of this case, there are some very serious doubts, troubling doubts, in reference to whether or not Oswald was involved in any way in the assassination. I think that all Americans have the right to know what took place on November 22nd, 1963. The only way we ever discover what actually happened under our system of law is when evidence and testimony goes through the crucible of cross-examination.
You do feel then that perhaps Lee Oswald is innocent of the charge of having assassinated President Kennedy?
Well, like all good Americans, I believe that, as the law tells me that I must, that a person is innocent, presumed innocent, unless proven guilty. Oswald has not been proven guilty. In addition to this overall presumption, there are some glaring holes and inconsistencies in the case against Oswald as presented by the District Attorney of Dallas, Henry Wade, just after Oswald had been killed in the Dallas courthouse basement. For example, Mr. Wade told us that the taxi driver who took Oswald from the scene toward his home was named Darrell Click. And Darrell Click was the taxi driver who drove Oswald. It turns out there is no Darrell Click who was a taxi driver in Dallas. I checked with the monopoly, the city transportation company, and in Dallas, and they said there is no Darrell Click who was employed as a taxi driver. This is one of the small inconsistencies. There are major ones. Mr. Wade stated to the whole nation on television that he had the murder weapon. It was a Mauser, a German Mauser. The next day, after the FBI revealed that Oswald had purchased an Italian carbine some months before in March, then for the first time Mr. Wade discovered that the murder weapon which he had then was not a Mauser, but it was an Italian carbine.
Do you feel the Warren Commission will bring out? What aspects of the case do you feel will be brought out by this presidential commission?
I'm hopeful that everything relating to this case will be brought out by the Warren Commission. I think all Americans, and with very good reason, have every confidence in Chief Justice Earl Warren. I am a little troubled to read in last weekend's newspaper a statement by Mr. Rankin, who's counsel to the Warren Commission, stating that they are not interested in determining the guilt or innocence of anybody. I thought that was going to be their function, to determine exactly what it is that took place on November 22nd. And I think that that's going to have to be clarified.
Do you have any personal views or opinions regarding Mr. Oswald's assassination allegedly by Jack Ruby in the Dallas police station?
One of the things I found most distasteful as an attorney was the tremendous coverage by the media with the leadership of the district attorney and the police authorities of Dallas and the FBI of all aspects of the case against Oswald prior to the time that he was to be tried while he was still alive. I think this is wrong, and I would not myself comment upon any case pending before the court, including that of Mr. Ruby.
Do you feel that Lee Oswald was denied his civil liberties then?
Oh, no question about that. The American Civil Liberties Union stated a little while ago that had Oswald lived, it would have been impossible for him to have secured a fair trial in America. I think that's the most disgraceful situation. I agree with that statement made by the ACLU.
How did Mrs. Oswald approach you about accepting this case?
She called me by telephone from Fort Worth to my New York home and asked me if I could come to Fort Worth and speak with her about a very important matter. And I said I would do that. I arrived in Fort Worth on January 11th, at which time she asked me if I would represent the interests of her son before the Warren Commission. She said that she accepts death, her son is dead, and that's the end of it as far as he is concerned. But that her son left 2 children behind, and she feels that they have the right to have determined for them whether or not Oswald participated in the assassination.
It's been reported that Lee Oswald's wife accepts the fact that he did assassinate President Kennedy, and Lee Oswald's mother has said that she feels this is not true. There must be some mistake.
Attorney, and it is the attorney and the business agent secured by the Secret Service who have been all along leaking statements to the press as to what Marina Oswald thinks and believes. If a defendant were held 48 hours incommunicado, not 7 weeks, but 2 days, and signed a confession, Chief Justice Earl Warren would throw that confession out of court immediately, and on the grounds that it is tainted. I wonder whether Mrs. Oswald's testimony, after being surrounded by the Secret Service and the FBI for some 7 weeks, will also be considered to be tainted.
I would want to see Jack Ruby given life, and when I say life, I mean, again, without parole. And of course, if Mr. Jack Ruby is insane, I sincerely hope that he gets the best treatment possible in our mental institutions.
This commission has functioned in a fashion which totally disregards the rights of the accused. A person charged with a crime in this country is entitled to a number of rights. I think it's quite plain from the medical evidence that shots were fired at the president from more than one direction at the same time.
What about the revised opinion on after the autopsy showing that they possibly thought the shots came from the rear?
Oh, there have been so many revisions in this case.
Well, Howard, you mentioned you're living, you lost your job, I think, in the nursing home right after the assassination.
Yes, I was discharged from my job. The sheriff's deputy who was in my home for protective custody went to get my pay. I was working in a rest home but doing private duty for a patient, and this patient would live possibly 2 or 3 years, so it would have been a steady case. However, when he went to get my pay, she cried and the morning nurse cried and said that the lady of the rest home refused for me to continue on the case. I can understand that probably my presence in her rest home might have caused her some grief because she had other patients. On the other hand, it's hard to understand how I should be left without work because I am an innocent victim of this. The way I'm surviving now, gentlemen, I had an insurance policy, which was an extended insurance policy on Lee's life of $863, and in contributions from the time that this affair started, I have approximately $900. That is my total income.
Well, you can say this, that at Mrs. Oswald's request, I am representing the interests of her son before the commission for the purpose of conducting an investigation, of securing all of the facts, but I'm totally a free agent in that regard, and the freedom given to me by Mrs. Oswald to release whatever information I secure. That's my role here. Mrs. Oswald is, as you see, an outspoken, independent woman, and she has the same freedom to act on her behalf. That's one of the reasons that I did not represent her before the commission, because I am not her attorney. I am the attorney retained by her to represent the interests of her son, and I'm totally free and independent to do so. And you can quote me, I know you will do that accurately, in terms of everything that I have said. And you should quote Mrs. Oswald quite accurately in terms of everything that she has said. He owned a rifle. Marguerite Oswald stated that after Marina Oswald came out of the police office, Marina said to Marguerite, "Mama, they asked me if Lee owned a rifle, a gun, and I told them the truth. I told them Lee did own a rifle. And then, Mama, they showed me a gun and asked me if it was Lee's." And Marina continued, "I told them that I did not think that that gun was Lee's. It looked different from Lee's gun." I think that the change in testimony here, accomplished as a result of protective custody and the presentation of one side of this case by the FBI and the Secret Service on a regular basis for some 9 weeks to Marina Oswald, is a classic example of brainwashing and has resulted in Marina now making statements very different from the statements which she made when she was first taken into custody. And I would like to see the exhibits and present evidence which is in my possession, which I believe proves rather conclusively that Lee Oswald did not fire a rifle on November 22nd.
What is that
You're
evidence?
saying that he's saying he's innocent?
Well, I don't know if anybody is innocent. I know the case which has been presented against him is full of falsehoods and contradictions. And I know that right now in the office of the Dallas District Attorney is a paraffin test which shows that Lee Harvey Oswald did not fire a rifle on November 22nd, 1963. I know that because I have a photostatic copy of that document.
Mr. Garrison took his own life just a week before that arrest was to have been made.
It's an understanding that he has taken, he did take his own life. Mr. Lane, in view of the latest developments, especially in New Orleans, I wonder if you could tell us what you think about this new investigation started by Mr. Garrison.
I think it may very well be the most significant event in terms of an investigation since the assassination took place. The rest of us, evidently, Mr. Garrison is a bit more curious than the Commission was.
How do you think you can help Garrison, or how do you plan to help him?
Well, I've been at this now for more than 3 years. I've made many trips to Dallas, 9 trips now. We've had a squad of independent volunteer investigators who have gone to Dallas, more than 25 now, for the last more than 3 years. We've compiled a mass of information. Some of it led to dead ends insofar as our investigation was concerned because we could not go any further if the witness refused to speak with us. I'll make all of this information, everything I have, everything I know about this case, available to Mr. Garrison. He seems to be interested in the matter, and I hope it will be of some use to him.
Mr. Tanio, what in your opinion would have been the result of